They can be. So they're going to be found they can be found in really good water, but if they're the only thing you're finding, then it's going to be an indicator of poor water quality. But if you, like, we find them out in the nature center in the Trinity, and it doesn't mean it's bad water quality because we're finding all the rest of these guys as well. Good question. I think leeches are really cool when we find them. Kids freak out. What's that? Yeah, I mean, it's fun to watch them attach. Okay, and you guys will be dip netting on your field trip and seining, which is so much fun. I actually have a seining program tomorrow if anybody's interested. There is room. Okay, aspects of a river's headwaters. So drip from a spring. Oh.
What time is your program?
9 a.m., 9 to 10. So, and starting in September, our programs are going to start at 10, so it's not as early. Marshy areas will be found, and we'll go more into wetlands and snowmelt. Aspects of a river channel. They're going to be wide, deep, and flowing. So in our West Fork of the Trinity, that is a good representation of a river channel. And like I was saying, around Todd Island, where that stream goes around, that's more of where you'll find the riffles, pools, and areas like that. Meander, which is always a fun way to say. Soil on the outside, deposit on the inside. So rivers, as you guys probably know, have a natural meander to them. A lot of times, let's see, I think on the next slide it shows it. So that right there, the way it's moving is considered a meander. And a lot of times we will channelize our rivers, kind of like, are you guys familiar with the Panther Island project that's happening, where they're putting the oxbow essentially back in? They channelized it at one point and cut that out, and it causes issues with flooding and everything else, as we just saw this past Monday with all our flooding in Fort Worth that we got in Dallas. But there's not a lot of vegetation around the banks in that section of the Trinity downtown. So that lack of vegetation, that channelizing of the river, that's causing issues with flooding more so. And then also not a lot of areas downtown for it to soak into the ground, all contributes to our issues with flooding. So rivers naturally know what they're doing when they create these forms. They go in the line of least resistance when they create these meanders. So when we channelize them, when it doesn't necessarily work out in our favor. Aspects of a river, riffles, this is kind of what I was talking about, where you'll find a lot of macroinvertebrates and things of that nature underneath the rocks. It's shallow, fast moving, stirs up mix-ups a lot. The oxygen, the dissolved oxygen levels are higher in that area. The pools, these are the deeper parts of the river. So if you guys have ever like walked down a creek and you'll walk through the riffle area, there'll be a big pool area and then you'll hit another riffle. That is what this is a representation of. That's what's happening there. They all follow this formation. So you see the area around it is the floodplain on either sides. And typically that's where, when you do a lot of construction building around the sides, like on the Trinity downtown, that's where you're going to have which have always been traditional floodplains, and you typically should not build on them. You're going to have a lot of flooding issues. The Trinity, the West Fork right out here, they purchased this land back in after they built Lake Worth. The city of Fort Worth purchased the land surrounding the watershed north of it to protect the watershed of the water that's going to flow into their water source. So they've owned this land since like the 1930s, and it's the native vegetation has always been there. So if you walk out along the Trinity, out at the nature center, that's what it should look like with all of the aquatic plants, the wetland plants. So when it does start to flood, those plants will absorb that water and hold on to it. And so it'll help it to seep into the ground. It'll also help with runoff and with water slowly being released back into the river. So it's not just one giant rush, in which is where you get a lot of issues with flooding. So removing those aquatic plants and those riparian trees and those completely carving out those riparian zones causes so many issues with that. Anybody hear about the flooding in Pakistan? Third of the country is underwater, 30 million people displaced, and over like 1,500 people died. So that was, and it was like one of the most historically devastating floods. And the prime minister said he had never seen anything like it. It's just an insane amount of flooding over there that just happened this past week. So floods are the #2 killer of natural disasters behind heat in the world. So it is a pretty serious issue when we're dealing with manipulating our water sources and the vegetation around them and such. It does not help. Okay, aspects of a river, riparian zone, it's kind of what I was just talking about, where you have river here, then the lower bank, you're gonna have some of your shrubs and trees found in that area. And as you get up to this middle bank, you're gonna have more dense vegetation. So these are gonna be like aquatic plants, bulrush, things of that nature, and then some maybe like button bush along the side. Up here, you're gonna have your larger trees like cottonwoods. If you go down in the, ever do a canoe tour or anything on the Trinity, you'll see a good representation of what a riparian zone should look like. You'll find cottonwoods and things in this area, and then you start getting into conifers and things higher up. So this highly vegetated area is what a good, healthy riparian zone should look like. And again, that's going to help with erosion. It's going to help with flooding. It's going to help mitigate a lot of those issues that we see when we clear cut these entire areas and build on. Any questions about riparian zones? Okay. Y'all know what I forgot? The surface tension thing. Okay, let's break real quick. We're gonna do surface tension. I was waiting for Jimena to get here. Okay. What's that? So, yeah, we'll do a 10-minute break and then we'll do the surface tension. And then, so if anyone needs to use the restroom or anything. Oh, am I recording it? Oh, it's recording from the camera? I didn't do it on purpose. Sure, yeah, but one cup of each. Oh, no.
I'm impressed that you're making the water. I should have told everybody that pipeline's big enough because we need the straw. Our original pipeline couldn't hold enough. Couldn't hold enough. Couldn't suck enough under here because our population's growing.
And then the Dallas is connecting.
Yeah, they're sharing.
Sharing part of it.
Yeah.
I used to, and I forgot that it was a big chamber. I didn't remember it was like how some of them were it's so interesting when that was going on. been named over years for that, right? Instead of just another filter.
The wetlands, yeah, the wetlands, yeah, they already have, we have the original shape, which is actually, I don't know about much, it's called Texas Parks and Wildlife. You check it out, it's really pretty. It was a fun job, I got to do a lot, because our engineering department's really small. We hired a lot of consultants, but internally, I got to do a lot. So I used to call there was something nature center. First time
Yeah, I missed it. We didn't get flooded this year, so I was like, yeah.
Were you here?
Yeah, I couldn't believe how many people
We might. There's extra. So there's 3 months in advance. Right now, they're putting out September through December. So if you go to FW Nature Center, it'll say phenology, and it'll pull up our entire calendar. And you can click, like, say you wanted to do a food farmer, it would have a link associated with it that you could click on and register to the city. Yeah. If you have any issues with that, you can always come report that to make it register. You're very Okay, yes. When did you go, Kadena? Marcia. Oh, you're Marcia's friend. Nice. Did she? Why is she not signed up in Massachusetts? You've been on hardcore hiking too, right? Okay. Marcia and Danielle. Okay. Nice. Did she tell you about Master Naturals, or did you sign up for it?
I signed up on my own. I can't remember about it. But yeah, I actually applied last year and didn't get accepted. So I applied.
Nice. Yeah, and you've already been accepted, that's great. But I was like, you could have let us know. We can always tell them, hey, we have someone that's interested, stuff. So, but if you want to do any of your volunteering here,
I do, but all of your stuff is in the morning. I can't find it.
what is your interest? Right.
Yeah,
Are you? What about afternoons?
yeah, afternoon's great.
Like what days? Any day
I
after?
have a working day for that.
Okay.
4 a.m.
Do you, opportunities we would have in the afternoon, like I said, it would be four-wheel paddle, or we have roving naturalists. So that's on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. There's a morning shift, but then there's an afternoon shift, 12 to 3. So Laura's the one that does the roving naturalist trainings. So you take one of the trainings and then you're eligible to sign up for it. And then, yeah, that's 3 hours and Saturday or Sunday afternoons.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And Sundays, no one really signs up, so that one's always open. So I can, once Lori gets one posted, then you can check our website, or we can email you and let you know, like, hey, there's a roving naturalist training coming up. Sign up for it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
We're out here all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah, so.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have a question, sir?
You were talking about the Riparian zone. I just read something, I can't remember where it might be. That years ago in Yellowstone, they killed off the wolf.
Yeah.
And allowed elk to populate and they eat all the trees along the
Yeah.
banks of the Yellowstone River. So then they're like the wolves.
Right. No, it's very true because they didn't expect that kind of negative reaction when killing off the wolves, because like the landowners and everybody else saw the wolves as just a complete negative thing. But when you take that apex predator out, and then you have all that population of deer, and we're overpopulated with deer, we don't have that. Thankfully, it's not to the point of like the it was really neat to see how that completely revegetated over time as they raised food.
That's kind of interesting too. And you know, it's, everything is connected. Everything is interconnected.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it probably wouldn't be their first choice, but with such a level of overpopulation, they were just eating everything. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing.
You don't work there? No. Okay. No, I just studied it. I used to, well, I'm a journalist and I had written some stuff.
Star Telegram?
Star Telegram, and for this particular story, it's for a special section that the Hazel News does for Steel Mountain Lake and stuff. I forgot if it wasn't like Colorado, but it's out the same direction.
Oh, okay.
It was so cool knowing that we get our own information. Like, it's been about a year or two since I wrote it, so I never really did the story again. But just knowing that it's getting typed in
Yeah.
from there.
I mean,
You look at water different.
yeah,
I
like
turn it off when I brush my teeth.
yes, yeah.
If you want something to know something cool, if you look up like the John T. Wilson Sands wetland out Seagoville, how they use it's man-made wetland that's about 3,000 acres. That they like virtual chambers, but they use the water that's sent from the treatment plant upstream, treated to EPA standards, but then it's filtered again through wetland and sent back to lake. My clothes on my, I'm not sure. You can. I mean, they have a nature center there. Yeah. Cool.
It is, yeah. And
It's
what is that?
the John T. Wilson Sands.
Oh, right.
That you can like get on the ground.
Oh,
There's
very
a volleyball that comes there every year.
Where is that at?
Seagoville,
Seagoville?
southeast of Dallas.
Okay, guys, we'll go ahead and reconvene. Gonna put some tidbits about trading off.
Anytime, write a story.
Yeah, because it's like you said, you didn't realize it came from East Texas, and they kind of flipped the switch where you're like, now I'll be more conscious of my water use. It's just little tidbits like that that it's not a lot of things that people don't know, they don't realize, like the little everyday things that we take for granted. So it's not intentional that people are wasting water and stuff like this. Right. Yeah, because there's walking out on the west coast. Yeah, that's okay, guys. Yeah, clap louder for me. Island did it. Okay, so now we're gonna do the surface tension activity. So you guys will each be in groups. So you two together, you two, groups of two, and everyone will get, each group will get one penny and one pipette, and then everyone will share the water. And the idea on this is you're going to see how many single droplets you can get fit onto the penny. Okay, so count your droplets as you go. Make sure you have a steady hand and not doing a stream of water, but individual droplets. And as you go, you can see once the bubble starts to form around the edge, you can see how the surface tension before that bubble breaks. How it looks. Yeah, you can guess how many you think you can fit on the penny. Yeah, a couple people have said trying the different sides of the penny. That's a really good idea. See if you can fit more on the other side. So you're going to draw larger droplets. So more water than that. There you go. That's actually really smart because you're going to get a lot more droplets than that. Yeah, you can try the other side. Yeah, that'd be crazy. So it's also showing cohesion, keeping together, even though it should, you would think in reality. It's also a side.
Yeah.
Got 44 over here. There's one in every class that tries to drink some soap water. Yeah, so now okay, guys. So I heard one group without the soap got 44. Anybody get higher than 44? What was that? 46? What was it over here? That's good, so? No. Oh. Okay. So did any group get more droplets on the penny with the soap? No. Why do y'all think that is? Someone tell us. What's that? Yeah, very good. And that's how it helps, like getting the getting all of the muck and stuff off your dishes and the laundry detergent. It helps get all the dirt out of your clothes and things because it helps to get into those individual fibers. So whoever invented soap, genius, helped us all for sure. Okay.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
What is it about the penny? We tried the water on the table. It's still built high, but then of course it spread. Is it just the edge? Is that why we use the penny, or is it the material itself?
It's not, good question. It's not the material. Someone stopped me, and it is a material, but it's not the material. It is the fact that it has an edge for it to create a little bubble because it's all hanging on to each other. Whereas when it just has space to flow, it kind of breaks easier. Okay, we have some more slides to get through, and then we have another activity that I want to make sure you guys got plenty of time for. Okay. Ripples, we talked about those. Floodplain, I kind of hit on that where we're talking about how you want to keep your floodplain vegetated and not remove all that vegetation because it's going to cause issues, especially if you try to build. Yeah. So you can see here the big pool elevation and then the flood prone elevation. So that's where it can flood up to that level. And so that's why when you're building, you'll want to do like wet soil survey and all these other things because you want to make sure you're not building in a floodplain for the most part, which people do still build in floodplains. It's not a great idea because your tendency to flood is much higher. Really, ideally, you want to leave those floodplains vegetated because they're in that riparian zone, which helps to buffer those flood levels. So unfortunately, that's not always the case. Say that again. Yeah, so when you remove that vegetation and stuff, when you start getting those 100-year floods and things more often and causes more issues. So it's very important to leave those vegetated. We're starting to revegetate a lot of our waterways that we clear cut. So now they're going in and they're doing like bioswales and they're putting in wetland plants and things that they've learned take out toxins, absorb a lot of those flood waters and things of that nature. So as we learn more and as our scientists are telling us, hey, this wasn't a good idea, we should do it this way. Cities and local governments and state governments are starting to listen and starting to make better judgments. So back in the 50s, not hating on any generation, but back in like the 30s, 40s, and 50s, they didn't necessarily have all the same knowledge that we're learning today. We're kind of learning from the mistakes of previous generations when it comes to those things. And then we're learning that how important it is to keep these zones vegetated and such. So like I was saying with the Trinity, it will flood here, but it helps the surrounding areas from flooding as well, like the homes and communities around us. So that's another reason the refuge is such an important place. It's not just for wildlife and recreation, but it's also for flood mitigation and the protecting the watershed. So
How would you define floodplain different from
the floodplain is in the riparian zone. The riparian zone, I don't know that there is much of a difference, except the definition of riparian zone is like the actual vegetation. The floodplain is where the crest of the water will go in that area. Riparian zones specifically, certain plants and animals will live in those areas. So if you take out a riparian zone, then those plants and animals aren't able to, if you remove the vegetation in that riparian zone, then you're going to decrease the wildlife that's found there. Floodplain's more just speaking to the where the water level is going to go. It's not talking about the biotic factors in it. Good question.
Decreased riparian zone, would that then move that floodplain line over? Because you would have more flooding.
If you made the riparian zone shorter.
area smaller, the floodplain would get larger.
Yeah, that's a good point because there's less of that riparian buffer to keep the floodplain intact. So it could potentially create a larger flooded area without that healthy riparian zone. Good point. And also without that healthy riparian zone, you're going to have more erosion, which is going to lead to more flooding and things of that nature. So yeah, that would eventually over time change the level of that floodplain. Good questions, points, and comments. Saves communities and flood damage cost, which very true. Aspects of a river mouth. Emptying an ocean, lake, or wetland. As you can see, talked about those tributaries, first order, second order, third order, meeting up into that larger main river and then going into a larger lake or wetland area. Creates habitat for wildlife and provides nutrient-rich soil. So lentic systems, remember Lodic was flowing, lentic is non-flowing systems. These are going to be used for drinking water. Does anybody know what's special about our lakes in Texas? They're all man-made. Yeah, they're all technically reservoirs. If you, yeah, we have one natural lake, Kettle Lake. Has anybody been there? I have not, but I've heard great things. What's that? Need to go canoeing there? Yeah. They have, oh, very nice. Awesome. Yeah, I would love to go. It's in East Texas for those of you that also have not been. But for the most part, we have reservoirs in Texas. So if you talk to someone up north around the Great Lakes, when they come down and you tell them you don't even really have lakes, you have reservoirs, they are not impressed. So they are used for drinking water, which is why we built all of ours for the most part in Texas. Electric power, agriculture, recreation, and lakes. So like kind of what we were talking about earlier with the building of Lake Worth Lake, it was a huge hub for recreation back in the day. It was like the Coney Island of the Southwest, Casino Beach we talked about. It was just before World War II, it was a big recreation hub where they had Ferris wheels and everything else you could rent. If you ever find old pictures from that time period, you could rent swimsuits and things from them. Yeah, they would rent out swimsuits. And someone said earlier they didn't want people swimming in a lake. It was supposed to just be for water. But the citizens of the surrounding area were so happy to have a lake to swim in that they just did it anyways. And then they decided to build an industry out of it. When I was growing up, I graduated from Saginaw High School. It was not the Coney Island of Southwest. You did not necessarily want to go to Lake Worth or Casino Beach for that matter. It's better now though, like Marine Creek Lake. Yeah, Marine Creek Lake too, they've completely, yeah. So it is, it has improved.
Is that structure still there?
Which
That structure still there? That's it, that is like.
I don't think that structure is still there. Is that where 199 is now?
That's a small bridge from a long time ago.
Maybe, that's a good question. Because I can't read that picture. Oh, 9 Mile Bridge at Lake Worth. So yeah, 9 Mile is still there. Did anybody ever go to Casino Beach back in the day when it was? I mean, it really was like the Wild West back in the day. And then Hell's Half Acre wasn't too far from there, but that's a whole different story, not relating to water. Yeah. So, and also, speaking of the Trinity, if you guys have seen 1883, where they start in Fort Worth and they go, yeah, it's really, really neat. It does some great history on Fort Worth as well, especially in the first few episodes. Okay, so lentic system zones, littoral. So this is the area right here where light's going to be hitting. It's near the shore, it's shallow. There's rooted plants. It's a macroinvertebrate hotspot. So this is going to be areas that you can get in the water. Macroinvertebrates are going to be hanging out in these plants. Not only is there prey found there, but it's also good hiding spots from predators such as fish and crawfish and other things that might eat them. So they camouflage really well in these aquatic plants. So good spots to find macroinvertebrates. Some lotus plants. Have you guys been out to Greer Island lately and seen all the lotus out there this summer? An insane amount of lotus out in that area this summer. We haven't been able to canoe except going up the channel all summer because that's the only place that isn't overrun with lotus. So I'm ready for them all to die back. And then limnetic, that's going to be this middle zone here. There's not going to be much vegetation in that area. Open, offshore. Oops. Contains light and temperature zones. And then the profundal zone, there is no light that gets this part. Let's see what it shows. So the profundal is this dark area down here near the bottom. Light does not reach it. And you'll mostly find bacteria. There's no photosynthesis happening. Lots of decomposers down there. But yeah, these are the little phytoplankton and things you'll find. Yeah. I personally don't swim in fresh water, but that's just me. I did when I was a kid, but now they have flesh-eating bacteria and everything else that you got to be worried about. So. They did tell, I think it was Dinosaur Valley, Madeline, that said don't swim this summer because of that. So they're putting out notices for sure. Okay. Then the benthic zone, that's where you're going to find, this is just another illustration of those. You're going to find the living species. It's at the bottom of the limnetic zone. Nutrient rich, there's decomposers down there. Lots of the larval stages that I was just discussing are going to be there breaking down organic matter. There's no photosynthesis happening in that area. This is just another illustration of the benthic zone is down there. Photic zone, that's where it's getting light. And littoral and limnetic. Littoral again, it's going to be on the shore where the plants, close to the shore where you're going to have your aquatic plants. Limnetic is going to be the deep water. And then profundal is an aphotic zone, no light and bacteria and such in that water. Okay, temperature zones, there's a ephelimnion. It's the top layer of water, it's warmer there, high pH and dissolved oxygen, phytoplankton, and it's less nutrient. Can anybody think why it would be less nutrient than some of the other zones? Yeah. And then out in the open, yeah. Yeah, I think all those would contribute to that. And then you have the metal. Say it one more time. Metalimnion zone. Cooler water at the bottom in the summer, warmer water at the top. In the winter, cold water at top, warmer water at bottom. And during the spring and fall, the thermocline breaks down. Nutrients, once on bottom, get moved to the top. So this is in constant circulation in that area, just above it. And then that third temperature zone, hypolimnion. So it's the underlake, it's denser than the rest, 4 degrees Celsius in winter, cold in summer, warm in winter, and very little photosynthesis. So you can see here, the depth of meters on the side, it's gonna start, looks like right about 12.5-ish meters deep. And it's very nutrient rich. Now the fun stuff, wetlands. So wetlands constitute marshes, ponds, bogs, bayous, swamps, oxbow. It's kind of like what I was talking about with the Panther Island project, where they're creating that oxbow effect again, which is the reason they were able to get the funding for that is because it does actually serve a purpose for flood mitigation. Otherwise, just because they're creating an island for Panther Island for retail and purposes like that, they would never have got the funding needed for it, which, as you probably all know, they struggled to get it in. What's that?
Give a commercial. for
Yes.
Panther Island.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I think the public hasn't been, I don't think it's been disseminated effectively. The Corps of Engineers, because we used to work for them.
Oh, very cool.
Keeps us from flooding in Fort Worth. And the Corps of Engineers with climate change, they regulate the levees in the river in Fort Worth. The water district maintains it. We've got local tax dollars maintaining it. Federal regulations keeping us combined. Works out well. So we never disagree. No. The Corps of Engineers with climate change said that the storms in the future are going to be so bad that our levee system is not adequate. The levees are, you got the river bank and then you've got levees up above for most of Fort Worth. So they said you can do one of two things. You can cut a channel, which will allow more flood water to go through Fort Worth, which is from about the new city hall, the old Pier 1 building, and cuts all the way up to about the intersection of Main Street and North Side Road. That's where the channel is going to go. So that channel is going to allow more flood water to be distributed through the central part of the city. And it is going to create an island. Okay. So we're not doing that just on a whim. It's because the Corps said you need to do that, or you can raise your levees up and make them really empty.
And restrict development. That's the.
Right. And cutting
They
the
want to do
channel.
that.
Pardon me?
They didn't want to restrict development.
Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, yeah. Oh, we're gonna do that.
It would be ugly. I mean, you want to block the view between your.
No, and I'm a proponent of the Panther Island project. I think it's a great thing. I think it has been very ran through the mud.
It was promoted more as a development. which
Yeah.
my peers, my former coworkers, we all were just like, no, don't tell them that.
Mhm.
And we've got a new project manager who used to work for the Corps of Engineers, it's not Bill, but I appointed him, this is his organization, and he is publicizing the effects of the message.
Yeah.
That Brian got. Yeah, he does the drone videos. Oh, that was fun to watch. Yeah. Yeah. It's actually, it's a flood control on the.
Yeah.
Oh, it's on there. Yeah, I think he's working with them now. It's hard for them. I love the video. Yeah.
So,
Does that help?
no, definitely. Thank you. Some of the commercial development they're gonna have like an inland lake, I believe, where they're gonna have houseboat. This is all part of, you can go on their website and see all these things, but they plan on having like a little island with, they'll have a houseboat area, a river running through it, or a canal, like
And that's
San Antonio.
That's the city of Fort Worth doing that development. It's not the others.
Yes, two separate things, right? They're getting funding from, and the Corps of Engineers is the one we just got the 400 million for to cut the channel, right?
Right.
Okay, that's what we were, they couldn't, none of the rest of that would have mattered without getting that money to cut the channel in the first place, so.
The bridges were built by Texas.
Yes, so it's a lot of different federal, state, and local governments working together on that project. It's a very ambitious project, which has been met with a lot of issues along the way. A lot of political issues as well that they ran into. Okay, Aquatic Food Web. This is pretty straightforward. We're all familiar with food webs. We were talking about these little guys down at the bottom, where it's the bacteria and the phytoplankton and such. Then you have the macroinvertebrates on the next level. So these guys are eating these guys. These guys are eating these guys. Energy is being lost through metabolism and such in the process. These guys are eating these guys, so energy is lost every time. And eventually they get eaten them. So if you take one of these out, say you don't have a healthy this bottom layer here, then it's going to affect this later. Or say like your macroinvertebrates you're finding there are just leeches and bloodworms. Well, that's not enough for these guys to be eating. So then these guys are going to start to get depleted. And if there's not enough of these, then they're going to be depleted. And then we're not going to have as many great blue herons because they're not going to have a food source either. So they are all connected. It goes into way more detail in the book about the aquatic food webs and such, and how all of this is very important. And people don't really think about these two layers. But this one, of course, feels this layer, but they don't think about the macroinvertebrates and the small little tadpoles and things that are found in these smaller layers that are so important to keeping the rest of the food chain thriving. You guys have any questions about food web?
This is a really long.
Yes, so from page 591 to 5,922, you can read about food webs. I told you it's very detailed. Okay, so energy pyramid, kind of what we were just talking about, but this is more of like how the entire thing is connected. So different things eat this little bullfrog tadpole, and then that energy from like this fish will eat all these. This guy, the beaver, is just eating the vegetation, and then the heron eats most of those. So this is just another depiction of what we were just looking at. Water issues for wildlife, pollution, point source and non-point source. Can anybody tell me the difference between point source pollution and non-point source? Yes, ma'am.
Point source, you know exactly where it came from, and non-point, you can't determine exactly where it came from.
Yeah, so non-point like is the fertilizers in our yard and things like that, oil runoff from the streets. Point source is going to be like a chemical plant or something like that. That's very obvious where that pollution is coming from. Say it again. Or a spill. Yeah, very good. Overpopulation. So we're talking about all these things that deplete wildlife populations. What would cause an overpopulation of wildlife? Yeah, so an imbalance in that food web would cause an overpopulation of a certain source. Very good. And that can also have its own negative effects because they're eating too much of one thing, and that can cause disruptions in the food web as well. Very good. Erosion, sedimentation can cause a lot of issues for wildlife that depend on those riparian areas. If they're not healthy, then those areas aren't going to provide as much shade for, say, fish in the river, or in that river's going to, the temperature of that river is going to be a lot warmer than it should be. And if they're not able to find places to seek shade, then that's going to cause issues. And sedimentation, when that erosion falls into the river, it's going to build up over time, and it's going to be there's going to be the flow to the river is going to be less, and it's going to cause lots of issues with the wildlife that live on the bottom and depend on the aquatic plants and such in those areas. Invasive species, zebra mussels, Hydrilla, giant Slovenia, water hyacinth. Zebra mussels are one that you guys might be familiar with that are being found in lakes all over Texas, and I'm sure many other states. This is why they tell you don't take one watercraft from one lake and put it in another without checking it first to make sure you don't have any of these attached. They cause a lot of issues with clogging up waterways and probably even more destructive than that. But they are not a native species. So again, when you're introduced a non-native species into an area, they may not have natural predators. They may have advantages that the native species don't have, and it can cause, it's never good. I haven't seen when an invasive species been introduced and it's been a positive effect. So if y'all can think of one, let me know. But typically back in the day, I don't think they do it anymore because I think we've kind of learned from this, but they would introduce different, if say you had like the gypsy moth, and how that one was introduced from Asia, and then they would introduce its natural predator to help take care of the gypsy moth population, and that would end up disrupting things even worse because you just introduced another invasive species. So we learn a lot from our own mistakes. And unfortunately, they're hard to reverse. Yes. The gypsy moth? It's spongy moth now? Oh, it's gypsy not? Yeah. Oh, okay. I see. I didn't know. I'm canceled already. Okay. Eutrophication, that's the buildup of nutrients in the water. So that's going to be like phosphorus, things like that. It can cause algal blooms, cause all kinds of issues. So a lot of this can come from non-point source pollution and point source, but we do get a lot from fertilizer runoff in your yards and oil, hydrocarbons and things that run into the streams and rivers. And when you have natural native plants along those riparian areas, they can take a lot of those nutrients and those chemicals out. They will absorb them, especially the hydrocarbons and wetland areas. But when you remove those plants, they can't serve those functions. So they cause what is known as eutrophication, which can lead to algal blooms and all kinds of issues. So again, when we mess with nature and it just doesn't work out for the best. It hasn't seemed to yet. So any questions about any of that? Yes.
I was just gonna bring up like the giant salmon. There's ongoing research and like salmon people's.
And was it a positive?
And it's supposed to be, it's one of those cases where they don't, you know.
Okay. Okay, very good. Well, thank you for providing a positive example of introducing a predator.
Like prescription drugs.
Yeah.
I think down in Medina River, there's a nature center down there, and some area of the water is down there. I can't remember. They were finding a lot of that in the water system.
There's a great documentary called The Thin Green Line. Once you start to read, that's right, where it's because of orphan focus. You know, when you're a
See, and that's not anything you can really control either. I was thinking like people flushing their drugs down the toilet or something, and they tell you not to do that for that reason,
This
but
is a while back, when our birth controls aren't quite as strong as they were when
Okay.
they first got introduced. I mean, they were,
was that part of the reason was because it was
I
affecting?
doubt that really seriously, if they took anything into
Right,
consideration, and
yeah.
all they did that was probably, health reason to do that, and also
Yeah.
probably economics. I'm sure they thought, oh, get away with this much instead of all this other thing.
And typically, that's a good point too. If you can spend something economically of how it affects the larger economic picture, then that's how you're going to make change happen, because that's what exactly, yes. So a lot of this, it's hard to put a price tag on, but people like Bill are able to do it to help us say like, hey, you can save this much money by keeping these wetlands intact. Wetlands provide this much amount of environmental services.
It's like with the bees, how they're marketing now, information.
Yeah.
Dollar amount that they do.
And so I think we're starting to figure that out, is once we can put a dollar amount on it, people understand that more, how much we're saving. Bless you. Okay, and we're gonna, do we have time for a break before this last one? Okay, we do a 5-minute break and then we'll come back and we have one last activity for you. Yeah. So this is environmentally friendly. Yeah. Sporadic groups right now. But then at the end of September, all week long, we have a Christian Academy coming Monday through Thursday. So 50 kids every day. So interesting.
Cherish these years.
Oh yeah. It's gonna be a great week. Okay, guys, everybody back. Okay, guys. All right, for our final activity, this is a really fun one. We're going to be building our own town. So we're going to be, and all your requirements for your towns are up here. They have to have a river that enters one side and exits the other, residential areas, shopping areas, city parks, schools, wastewater treatment plant, landfill, road system, community-specific requirements to the above urban design projects, which I'll show you in just a second. It's different for each town, and be creative. So there's a lot of thought that goes into this. Obviously, if you're putting a wastewater treatment plant and landfill, you really want to think about where you place those, right? So we're going to get into groups of 3, I believe, with one group of 4. There's 29 people here. Is that right? I didn't count. I was just told. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we're going to be in groups of 8, or there's going to be 8 separate groups. 4. What's that? Yeah, we can do that. I think we can manage without. You may need to use floor space. If you want to, you don't necessarily have to stay there.
Something to hold on to.
Ocean view, you can write down your particular requirements for yours. So ocean view, yours is a coastal community for recreation. Yes. Yeah, it should say it top. Okay. This Big money estates are over there. Okay, so you're green all the time in plant communities. So you can write that down. That's your specific designation. Yeah, I'll bring that back up. What's that? I'll bring it back up. Tornado City, yours is mobile homes. Whoever tornado, you guys. Moonscape, community built around a mining company. Who is Moonscape? You guys? Okay. Big Dam City, it's a hydroelectric dam. Industryville, location at the junction of 2 rivers, which meets to form a 3rd river. So make sure to write that down. Yeah, yes, perfect, thank you. Farmers Town, a farming community with row crops of all kinds. And that's it. Did everybody get their special designations? Good. There you go. And there's the Riparian. We are presenting these in front of the rest of the class, so keep that in mind.
So the main river, we get by. You may get 15 inches of rain in one day. That was just what are you gonna do? Because they're really dry. That's not true.
Hey guys, you have about 5 minutes left. Few more minutes, guys. Okay, guys, if y'all will start wrapping up, we will have our first group, Farmers Town. All right, y'all will come up to the front. Bill, and you'll also come up here. Need your mic. Need your mic.
You need my hat to point to something? Oh, okay, good, good. You have tape?
Yes.
Oh, well, that kind of thing.
All right, guys. Our first group.
This is Farmerstown or Farmersville. So we have a meandering river that goes through it. True to form, it is not straight. We have the special feature of this town is that it's a farming community. So our farming community, because of pesticide use, chemicals and whatnot, we have it kind of in the lower elevation part of the river and the environment. So it's downstream and at low elevation when it's upstream. Similar considerations were taken towards the land away from the water, and the wastewater is also downstream or downriver, so that any of that water doesn't go back into the deep. Otherwise, it was pretty free form for the residential areas, which are the brown blocks. Those were in scenic places around the river. Shopping was central to the residential areas, as well as parks. We tried to keep the parks kind of close to the river areas. And we have our nature center.
Nice.
Trails, hills and
Trails.
trails.
There you go.
Up in the
Perfect.
really high environs of the city.
And with the wastewater treatment plant, once the water is treated, it goes through the marsh and enters back in the river as clean.
Nice.
We
Very
also
good.
have some test ponds around the landfill so that we can make sure that nothing's seeping out and getting out into the community or farmlands.
Wow.
Green space around it as well.
Yeah.
So what do you do about all your concrete from your shopping mall and all that waste of oil and all the gas from all the parked cars, and how do you mitigate that as going into the river?
We talked to the.
Yeah.
We channel it all towards the waste wall.
But that's upstream. How do you do that?
That is a good question. See, and that's why we have people like them.
We're gonna take this road and just only have one road on the downside, so all that wooden stuff will go down. Down the lower elevation.
But you could use your grasslands the same way, surrounding you, because you have your stilling basins for your drain, your parking lots, and then have it go into wetlands. Same way. You know, it absorbs all those heavy minerals and things that'll go in the water.
That's good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Then we put a hospital in, we weren't supposed to.
Awesome. Good job, guys. And we'll leave this up here.
Yeah, okay.
Put it up too high.
Why I asked Bill to come tonight. Not because he's in the Army Corps of Engineers or anything.
Yeah. There you go. Okay.
Thanks, sir. All right, who was our second group? Industryville. Oh, there's a lot of movement. Okay. You guys can step right up.
So this is Industryville. Everything's kind of written in all sorts of different directions, but our wastewater that we claim first will go downstream to the city. Their problem now. And our cities obviously was focused in industry, and we have two forks of a river that met into one. So that was one of the things we had to work around.
So is that a benefit or?
It's
Problem.
Take care of your problem. Take care of your problem, but our parks.
So we consider the two rivers joining one, the river normally is in these channels, and then we have a riparian zone that's a green park space, you know, like Tarrant County. And so in here we have high-rise condos. So you have a view of the rivers, and then you have shopping with retail parking and the green spaces. These are our roads, these are bridges. And up here we have office business districts. And then at beyond the riparian zone, this green area, we have urban forests. We should have 20 trees over here and here. This is industry concentration right here. The landfill at the farthest reaches, wastewater treatment here, and residential, schools, churches.
We have a hospital And then for the industry, we have the Amazon, Tesla, Kellogg's Energy over here, and then some other factories and, some shopping areas for these people while they're working. I put a nuclear power plant there now. I'm realizing now that I don't know if that would be a good thing if we were gonna flood. But it's the thought that counts.
Very
If it
nice.
was industry, I have to put a little bit, oh, the solar panels on top of the factories.
Great job. Awesome job. We'll do it that way. Connect it there. Yes. There's a method to the madness.
Okay. I was going to, but our river and mix.
Okay, so as you can see, their landfill is right next to their wastewater treatment plant, so. Oh yeah, your arrows are going the opposite way. You get the gist. Who's my next group? Big Dam City. Who's that?
Okay, so we are the Big Dam City. Our special feature was that we had to have a hydroelectric dam, and so we wanted to find a way to incorporate that into our just recreational experience throughout the city. And so the way that our water is flowing is from this northwest direction down to southeast, with our dam being a very large reservoir and just being the key of the heart of the city. Right here, we do have that dam, and we have our wastewater treatment down here so that by the time it's going out of the city, it's nice and clean for the next one. So we've got green spaces all around the lake, just because I feel like it was heavily modeled off of the reservoirs that we already have here in North Texas. Just like thinking Cedar Hill State Park, for example, or Louisville Lake Environmental Learning Area. Those spaces are heavily influenced this design. We also have residential areas. These are probably like the higher end, people that can afford the lakeside view kind of thing. But for people who can't, we've got residential areas over here too. And everything's close to green spaces. Everything's super accessible. There's schools next to all residential spaces. There's our shopping center way off in the corner of nowhere is our landfill, because we don't like to think about it. And just to keep with the theme of our Big Dam City, we want to incorporate some beaver. So we've actually got a Buc-ee's at ours, and so it's pretty nice and simple. But you know, we've got a roundabout here, so we've got access to all the whole city. So that's our
Very good. Good job. This way?
Yes.
Okay, great. I can handle
Get that? Yeah.
It's right at my height. Okay.
Ours kind of grew working. Yes.
Okay, one more. I'm not gonna stay here.
Okay, perfect. Next, we have Moonscape.
We have Moonscape. We're a small community of miners. It's about 1,200 population. So mostly miners and their family. The ones with families, we have the housing area. we have a mixed use development with apartments above, so a lot of them just have these one bedroom apartments here, and then we've got restaurant, a florist, clothing shop, a gym, a bakery. We have a library, our mine, which is our town, is down here, the big hole mine. And we contacted the Corps of Engineers to get some ideas when they were building the mine on, you know, some ways to protect the land. And so
Very
we do
smart.
have the little runoff ponds, place to catch some of that stuff. They want to kind of make some money after mine, so they're doing mining tours too. So we have a place for that. And we were trying to make this part of town a little bit nicer because it's kind of got all the landfill, the mine, you know. So we do have some artwork that we consulted with some artists, and they came in and did some artwork along the trail there in a nature center. So it kind of adds a little bit of value to this part of the city too, because that has, you know, the water treatment plant. Our river does have a nice riparian area, so it can catch any runoff. What else? Oh, we do have our school up here in the park, and so that's our
Very
mining
good.
town.
Good job.
Yeah, we found that out.
Okay. Tornado City.
So we had Tornado City, here's our water right here, our water treatment plant is down here. This is the more traditional, what you would think of as park space, and this is all open land, so all that water's able to infiltrate if it floods over. We got our school and our neighborhood and our shopping center with a nice little detention basin in the middle for that storm water as well. And then our landfill right up there. Yep, and we didn't build that much because we didn't want the tornadoes to take it out.
Very smart. Very good job, guys.
Yeah.
See. Okay. Big Money Estates.
Okay, so we did Big Money Estates, and it's green all the time, and it's a planned city. So we worked it around a very large meandering stream or river. And we put the landfill all down at the bottom, like many people did. And we have a wastewater plant right at the beginning of our meandering stream because we want the water that's coming in to be clean. Because we don't know what the other cities are doing. And we've got very large estates around the stream. We have bridges and a shopping area with a hospital and a bank nearby. This way other communities can come in and shop at ours shopping area as well, because there, with the larger estates, there isn't as high of a population. And we've got schools on both ends of the city, a golf course and a library. Did I miss anything? We got it.
Good job. And a 5, 8.5. Okay. Last resort.
So last resort's kind of like an upland impounded stream. It was originally the thought of it was probably a drinking water source, but I'm thinking of Lake Kiowa somewhere in north central Texas. But eventually what kind of people did, kind of like Lake Weatherford, they started kind of building around it. As the community around it kind of just organically grew, this site was reserved as a city park because it's kind of flood prone anyway, and it's kind of a nice green space because of the water there. We have houses that kind of just grew on the other side of the river. We've got our roads that access to the park and around the lake, kind of the shopping center over here, so that we have both parts of the community that can reach it. Industry is kind of pushed away because it's kind of a necessary evil. People need jobs and all. Landfill is away from the water source, and wastewater treatment plant is downstream, so that we're not contaminating the source of water where everyone lives.
Very good. It sounds like everyone's very thoughtful about where they're putting their wastewater treatment plants and how they're designing their green spaces. Really good job. Okay, last but not least is gonna be ocean view. Get this one. We'll go up to that.
Yeah, if you want to hold it, that would be great. No. Oh no, the distraction. We want full attention on ocean view because it's magical. You're all gonna want to move there.
Join your tippy toes.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, excuse me.
Okay, last but not least, of course, is ocean view. So like pretty
pretty much everybody else, we decided that we wanted our water treatment and our waste facilities away from the main part of the community. So here we have our water treatment plant. Surrounding that, we have a nice marshy area so that as the water is treated and ready to go, it can be released into that marshy area before it makes it into the river and back down through the riparian area and out to our ocean, which is down here on the end. So up here, we have our landfill and we have a recycling plant. So everything will come in first to the recycling plant. Things that can be recycled will be recycled. Everything else will go to the landfill. On the north side, I'm guessing it's north, yeah, this northeast side of the river, we have a neighborhood, bunch of different neighborhoods with homes, all surrounded by green belt areas that were left natural. This is a green belt park here up along the river. We have a couple different bridges that lead back over from either side, so you can go back and forth. We put a hospital, like a couple of you others did. We put a hospital. We have our school here. We have apartments. We have shopping and restaurants all here as you get closer toward the beachside community. We also put solar panels and windmills. I was gonna say wind chimes, but that's not right. There might be wind chimes. There probably is on the beach, but not wind chimes. Windmills, wind turbines, whatever, yeah, y'all know what I'm talking about. So we've got those here as well to help support the power for this particular community. We also have public parks and beaches here along the ocean itself. And the purple, I know it's a little hard to tell, but the purple is bike paths all through the community. So you can, we didn't have time to draw in all the roads, but you could drive your cars if you wanted to, but this is a very accessible area. So you would be encouraged to use the bike paths.
Okay, guys, that was perfect timing. So what is one thing, you were all very thoughtful in your planning and design. Except me with my space for the last place.
There you go.
There it is. Welcome to the ocean. You were very thoughtful in your designs in your own town. Did anyone think about the surrounding communities that are connected when y'all were building your town?
Some people you started painting.
Yeah, right. And that's kind of the idea of the practices, that we're all connected, even though we're in individual towns and communities. What we do in our space affects the people downstream from us. And as you can see, Big Bunny Estates is at the top, so they may not be as conscious of what's happening downriver up them.
You're
So,
welcome to come shop in Big Money.
right.
Or Oceanside down there, Ocean View, we get everybody's garbage coming all down there.
Right, and so you gotta think about like landfills that are very intentionally placed in this community may affect communities down below it. Like this landfill in their community is right next to their wastewater treatment plant, so that may be issues. And let's see, is there any other? Yeah, so there's a lot of different things to factor in when you're designing communities and thinking about the people outside of your own local general community. It kind of visualizes that. So great job, everybody. Y'all did really good. Thank you, Bill. Thank you. All right, thank you guys very much. It is 9 o'clock. 8:58, so that was perfect timing. If y'all have any final questions, I'll be hanging around here getting cleaned up. Yes. Oh, but thank you, y'all were a great class.
Are you gonna leave some cards with your email?
Yes, I'll go grab some cards for this.
Looking for volunteers.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you guys again. First thing, has everybody signed in? Everybody, nobody has missed signed in? Okay, we have a door prize tonight, which is this really cool book on Texas fishing. So Ryan's gonna do a random number generator to see
Random number.
what, and all your names are numbered here. So who's our lucky winner? Roseanne. Roseanne. Here you go. All right. Okay, let's see. Okay. The next one was to say, we were gonna send out a little sign up thing for the food. But I think what I'm just gonna do is just ask you guys every week, like, who wants to bring food next week? Just snacks, nothing fancy. So maybe get 3 or 4 volunteers. would be
Whoever
great.
made those cookies needs to be on next week too.
Okay, okay. People who compliment my banana pudding, I always want to make more banana pudding because I love praise. It's my love language.
I'll bring something, Melinda.
Okay, so
Why don't you bring some banana pudding?
I say, you threw it out